From bans on social media sites to internet blackouts and harassment campaigns against journalists, increasingly, governments across the continent are making it harder to speak out. Last year, there were more than 20 shutdowns across a dozen countries. In Chad, a block on social media lasted over a year. Now, this year, authorities in Niger, Congo, and Senegal cut access to the internet during elections and protests. Now, after blocking Twitter, Nigeria says social media companies must be licensed by the Broadcasting Commission. And in Rwanda, human rights organizations warn that the repression is more targeted. More than 20 bloggers and YouTubers have been detained or disappeared within the past year. In our next report, we meet one of those journalists caught in the crosshairs.
Theoneste Nsengimana and his crew have come to this overlooked corner of Kigali to hear the story of a community seething with anger. Residents here were promised compensation to leave their homes so a school could be built, but the money never materialized. Such stories are common on Nsengimana's successful YouTube channel. It's not long before the police tell the team to stop filming, a workplace hazard for Rwandan reporters. Last year, he was arrested on trumped-up charges. Being a journalist in this country is very hard. You can get killed. You have to be ready to die of hunger because you are deprived of work. And you're a candidate for prison at any moment. So you have to work like a suicidal person if you want to advance in this career. He is just one of a growing number of YouTubers who have been targeted by the Rwandan media regulator. They argue that memories of the 1994 genocide are a warning that free speech can be used to incite violence. I think we're right to tell journalists to be careful. We're still in a fragile society. Some of the content on YouTube and on the internet contains hate speech and can be the cause of divisions and even revisionism. NGOs say the crackdown on the YouTube community has gone too far.
Institutions in charge of overseeing the media have to look at critically, not to just block them or end up throwing them in prison or arrest them. I think it's something which calls for an open dialogue, looking at the international standards on media, on freedom of speech and media.
Nsengimana's team are editing their day's filming, but their minds are back on what they say is a government campaign to crush free speech and dissent. The government must accept that people need to share their opinions, to express themselves, and the only window left to be heard is YouTube. So if they continue to lock us up with their manipulated media propaganda while people are suffering, it will cause problems in the future because the citizens are frustrated. Even as the threats of violence and detention against journalists ramps up, Nsengimana refuses to be silenced.
From East Africa, we turn to West Africa's Nigeria, where government's decision to forbid access to Twitter has riled up users.
We are not in military regime. We have rights to freedom of speech, and so we should be allowed to speak. We should be allowed to air our views, whether be it on Twitter, Facebook, wherever it is. We should be allowed to air our views. That's my candid opinion.
There's other social media apps that are running currently in the country. We can use that one to voice out our anger, let them know that what they do is so wrong, and trying to let them understand that whatsoever be that they are having in mind, that it's not for our own best interest, rather it's for their own selfish deeds.
The suspension came after Twitter deleted a post on President Buhari's account, citing a violation of its rules. The ban was widely condemned, but the Nigerian foreign minister defended the move during a meeting with diplomats.
Why we've taken this measure is to see to what extent we can rebalance these media as forces of good and stop them being used as platforms for destabilization.
For more on this, I am now joined by Japheth Omojuwa. He's a Nigerian blogger, political commentator, and social media expert. Hello, Japheth. Welcome to the program. So you have 1 million followers on Twitter. What are your thoughts on the ban?
I think the ban is embarrassing. It's very, very avoidable. The government definitely has issues to grind with Twitter, but they could have, like most democracies around the world, they should have engaged Twitter directly as a corporate rather than removing their own citizens from those platforms and costing jobs and livelihood.
What do you think this means for free speech?
It's a huge setback for free speech, not just in Nigeria, but actually for the continent, because as you would know, Nigeria has quite a huge social and political and actually historical pull on the continent. So it's a huge setback for free speech, for liberty, and all the appurtenances of freedom and liberty in Nigeria and in general on the continent in Africa.
Let's listen to the argument, though. The government says Twitter is a threat to stability and peace in the country. Do they have a point?
I think they do have a point. I actually think they do have a point with respect to the fact that Twitter has given platforms to people that are directly calling on insurgency, that are directly coordinating destruction and arson and killings, actually. And so even though they do have a point, the way they've gone about expressing that point is what I have a problem with. They could have engaged Twitter directly, and they could have made Twitter understand that, look, you've given your platforms to terrorists in one way or the other, and please find a way to remove them from your platform. And that could have happened. Other governments around the world have done that, and they've done that successfully. But the platforming your own people is something that should have been, it's uncalled for, and it was something that they didn't have to have tried or done.
Okay, so I think I see the point you're making there. You're saying instead of totally banning the use of Twitter, they should have engaged Twitter directly to try to address the situation. Very challenging, though, but I see your point. This is not just a problem in Nigeria, as you said earlier. There's been dozens of shutdowns across the continent. Why do leaders like to target the internet and social media?
The first point of place for that is because lots of them are relics and they don't understand how the world works now. They are coming from the age of newspapers and television as the main platforms for news and their people's access to news and information. The world has changed now. It's a much more democratized space. So whilst you can shut down a TV station and nobody would even pay attention from outside of your borders or even a newspaper, now, shutting down your people from accessing the internet is a global issue, even though it's your own people. So they don't understand that bit. And also, there's always the side of government never comfortable with their people having big voices, too many voices, such a democratized space where anybody can say anything, and minus even the power and cover of anonymity. So it's something that definitely would make people that are used to power and controlling everyone get concerned and be afraid for their own future with respect to their power. So oftentimes it's not even about the country and the interests of the country. Oftentimes it's about individuals and the interests of these individuals.
It's an interesting point you're raising. On that point, how concerned are you, or should we be, that many countries seem to be sliding towards a more repressive approach?
We should be concerned. We should be concerned. And we should understand that the battle and the quest for freedom will never end. Look at America, one of the strongest democracies in the world, and they are still battling for the right to vote and the process of voting. We hear about collusion, we hear about gerrymandering and the likes, and that's one of the strongest democracies in the world. So we should be concerned, and we must continue to commit to ensuring that these spaces continue to be free, that liberty continues to be expressed by everyone, rich or poor, weak or powerful, irrespective of their background and their race and all the appurtenances of our humanity. So we should be concerned that we must continue to commit to freedom and our access to not just Twitter, but all the platforms that allow people to express their freedom.
Very quickly, before you go, what needs to happen to ensure freedom of speech on the one hand and responsible use on the other?
First of all, is that everyone should understand that whilst these platforms are new, there are actually legal means to addressing people that cross the line because there's no freedom that is absolute. I have freedom, but I don't have the freedom to kill no one. I have freedom of speech, but I don't have the freedom to libel no one or defame no one. And there are laws against all of those things. So government must just find a way to make those laws stronger to accommodate electronic evidence and evidence according to the evolution of media. But there should never be a reason to stop your people from speaking, because ultimately, if your people do not have the power to speak, then what's the essence of democracy?
Okay. Japheth Omojuwa, Nigerian blogger, political commentator, and social media expert, thank you for your insights.
My pleasure. Thank you.